The Founder of Demonic Cultivation. An English translation by Fan EE 33. Read by Luna Minerva. Chapter 17. Elegance, Part 8. Wei Wuxian bought a large assortment of knickknacks and other items in Cai town, brought them back to the cloud recesses, and divided and handed them out to the other junior disciples. Because Lan Xichen had gone to Qinghe, there were no classes these days, and thus the crowd of youths got up to enough misbehavior and tomfoolery to darken the skies and blacken the earth. One after another they crowded into Wei Wuxian and Jiang Cheng's quarters and laid makeshift beds for themselves on the floor. They ate and drank all through the night, throwing dice with one hand while flipping through collections of salacious pictures with the other. One night, after Wei Wuxian had lost a game of dice, he was forced to sneak down the mountain to buy some jars of Emperor's Smile. At last, everyone completely satisfied their desires for food and drink. However, the next day, before the sky had brightened, while the floor was still littered with slumbering bodies, someone suddenly opened the door. The sound of the door startled some people awake, and through eyes still hazy with sleep, they saw the icy face of Lan Wangji at the entrance. The sight scared them wide awake. Wei Wuxian's head was draped over ㅤㅤㅤㅤ's lower body, and the latter gave the former several frenzied shoves. "Brother Wei! Brother Wei!" Having been pushed several times, Wei Wuxian said in a daze, Who else wants to come? Is it Jiang Cheng? If he wants to join, let him join. Do you think I'm afraid of him?" Jiang Cheng's head still hurt from last night's binge, and he was still laying on the floor with his eyes closed. He reached backwards, grabbed something, and hurled it in the direction of Wei Wuxian's voice. "Shut up!" It flew towards the middle of Wei Wuxian's chest, its pages flapping open as it struck. ㅤㅤㅤㅤ stared. The book Jiang Cheng had thrown at Wei Wuxian was his most precious, out-of-print book of erotic pictures. Lifting his head again, ㅤㅤㅤㅤ saw the chilly eyes of Lan Wangji and nearly vomited up his soul, while Wei Wuxian hugged the book, muttered a few words, and fell back asleep. Lan Wangji stepped inside and over the other bodies, grabbed the back of his collar, hauled him to the door, and dragged him outside. After being lugged around for a while and experiencing a short bout of confusion, Wei Wuxian was finally half awake. He turned his head. "What are you doing, Lan Zhan?" Lan Wangji didn't utter a single word as he continued to drag him onward. Wei Wuxian woke up a bit more, while the sleeping corpses lying on the floor were roused one by one. Upon seeing that Wei Wuxian was being carried away by Lan Wangji again, Jiang Cheng rushed outside. "What's going on? What are you doing?" Lan Wangji looked behind him and spoke each word one by one. "Punishing him." As Jiang Cheng had woken up still drunk, his reactions were sluggish. Only now did he recall the disarray within his quarters and the countless number of cloud recesses rules they must have broken last night. His expression turned stony. Lan Wangji hauled Wei Wuxian to the front of the Gusu Lan clan's ancestral hall, where 8 senior Lan clan disciples were already present, waiting quietly. 4 held incomparably long sandalwood discipline rulers, whose every centimeter was carved with rectilinear characters. The disciples' appearances were cold and grave, and upon seeing Lan Wangji dragging someone inside, 2 of them immediately walked forward, grabbed onto Wei Wuxian, and held him firmly to the ground. Half kneeling and unable to struggle, Wei Wuxian said, "Lan Zhan, are you trying to punish me?" Lan Wangji stared at him coldly and was silent. "I refuse," Wei Wuxian said. At this time, the not quite fully awake group of boys rushed over, but were blocked from entering the ancestral hall. Each fiddled with their ears and scratched at their cheeks anxiously, and when they saw the discipline rulers, they were scared speechless. To their surprise, they also saw Lan Wangji lift his white robes and kneel beside Wei Wuxian. Upon seeing this, Wei Wuxian paled in shock, and did all he could to struggle out of the Lan senior's grasp. But Lan Wangji shouted, "Strike!" Wei Wuxian gaped. Wait! He hastily interjected. I accept being punished. I accept, Lan Zhan. I'm wrong! Ah! The palms, legs and backs of the pair suffered over 100 of the discipline ruler's blows. Lan Wangji did not need anyone to hold him down. His back was as straight as an arrow from beginning to end, and his kneeling position was impeccable. On the other hand, Wei Wuxian howled like a wolf and wailed like a ghost, devoid of even an ounce of stoicism. The other visiting juniors stood around the scene, watching and grimacing in sympathy. After the beating was finished, Lan Wangji stood silently, politely said goodbye to the disciples inside the hall, and left, exhibiting not a single sign of injury. Wei Wuxian, however, was the complete opposite. Jiang Chang had to carry him out of the Lan ancestral hall across his back, and he cried out in pain incessantly the entire way. The juniors crowded around them like a swarm of bees. "Brother Wei, what's going on? Lan Zhan punishing you is hardly a surprise, but why did he get beat as well?" Wei Wuxian moaned and groaned as he lay draped over Jiang Chang's back. "Oh, I miscalculated. It's hard to explain. "Stop beating around the bush. What exactly did you do?" Jiang Chang said. "I barely did anything. Last night after I lost a game of dice, remember how I had to go and buy Emperor's Smile? Ugh." "Don't tell me you ran into him again." "You're exactly right," Wei Wuxian said. I don't know why I have such rotten luck. When I was carrying the Emperor's Smile back, I was stopped and caught red-handed again. He must be watching my every move, day in and day out. Jiang Chang said, "You think everyone's as idle as you." And then I followed him so I could greet him. I said, "Lan Zhan, what a coincidence, it's you again." Of course, he ignored me like before. But then, without saying a single word, he sent his palm flying at me. I said, "Hey, is this necessary?" And he told me that if guests violated the curfew too many times, they had to go to the Lan Ancestral Hall to be punished. So I said, "There's only the two of us here. If neither of us says anything, no one will know whether I broke curfew, right?" I promised him it wouldn't happen again, and since we were already so familiar, couldn't he cut me some slack? Everyone seemed unable to listen to this a moment longer. Wei Wuxian continued. But he went all stony-faced and said we weren't familiar. Then he raised his sword and attacked me as though he didn't have any friendly feelings at all. I had to set aside the Emperor's Smile and do something about him. He chased me and was always only a hair's breadth behind. I couldn't throw him off, no matter how hard I tried. In the end, I got fed up with being pursued, so I asked if he was really so determined not to let me go. "You really won't let me go?" "He still said you will be punished." The group of youths listened, their hearts dangling with suspense. Wei Wuxian told the story with great gusto and aplomb, and completely forgot he was still on Jiang Chang's back. He slapped Jiang Chang's shoulder passionately. I said, "Fine," stopped fleeing, and threw myself at him head on. I caught him, wrapped my arms around him, and we tumbled outside of the Cloud Recess's walls. So, both of us landed outside the boundaries of the Cloud Recesses together. The fall was so hard I saw stars dancing before my eyes. Already dazed, Nie Huaisang said, "He didn't struggle free?" "Oh, he tried," Wei Wuxian replied. "But my hands and feet were deadlocked around him. He couldn't have escaped if he wanted to. There was no way for him to climb up from my body, and he was stiff as a board. I told him, 'Now what, Lan Zhan? Now you're outside of the Cloud Recesses too. We've both violated curfew.'" Sorry. "You can't be strict on others but make exceptions for yourself after all. If you punish me, you have to punish yourself too. Everyone has to be treated equally. So now what?" Wei Wuxian continued. After he got up, his expression was horrible. I was sitting beside him, telling him that he didn't need to worry and that I wouldn't tell other people about it. Only the sky, the earth, and us two would know. Oh, but without a single sound, he left. Who'd have guessed that this morning he'd do what he did? Jiang Cheng, could you walk a bit slower? You almost threw me off. Not only did Jiang Cheng want to throw him off, he practically wanted to throw him head first to the ground so hard it would leave a human-shaped hole. I'm already carrying you. Stop being so picky. It's not like I wanted you to carry me, Wei Wuxian said. Jiang Cheng fumed. If I didn't carry you, you'd be lying on the floor of their ancestral hall for the entire day. How shameless are you? Lan Wangji got hit 50 times more than you, but he managed to get up and leave on his own. And you still have the nerve to act like you've been crippled? I don't want to carry you. Get the hell off of me. I'm not getting off, Wei Wuxian said. I'm a casualty. The crowd of people pushed and shoved each other along a little pathway made of white stones, and just so happened to encounter a passerby robed in white, carrying a tome. Astounded, Lan Xichen stopped immediately and smiled. What's happening here? Jiang Cheng couldn't have felt more awkward and had no idea how to answer, so Nie Huaisang beat him to it. Brother Xichen, Brother Wei was punished by being hit over 100 times with a discipline ruler. Is there any medicine that could help him? The person in charge of punishments at the cloud recesses was Lan Wangji, and Wei Wuxian seemed seriously injured. He was surrounded by a group of boys and had been wailing pitifully the entire time. Lan Xichen immediately approached. Did Wangji punish you? Young Master Wei, are you unable to walk? What exactly happened? Naturally, Jiang Cheng was too embarrassed to talk about what Wei Wuxian had been up to. After all of them had egged him on to go and buy alcohol, and they all deserved to be punished as well. He could only speak vaguely. It's nothing. It's not that bad. He could walk. Wei Wuxian, why haven't you gotten off yet? I can't walk, Wei Wuxian said, sticking out his red and very swollen palms. He complained to Lan Xichen. Cao Jun, your little brother's so ferocious. Lan Xichen examined Wei Wuxian's hand. The punishment does seem somewhat excessive. I'm afraid it won't heal in just 3 or 4 days. Jiang Cheng didn't know the beating had actually been so harsh. Startled, he said, What? It'll take longer than 3 to 4 days? They even struck his back and his legs. How could Lan Wangji be like this? His final sentence contained an unintentional note of dissatisfaction, and only after Wei Wuxian surreptitiously slapped him did he realize it. But Lan Xichen seemed to pay it no mind. Smiling, he said, However, the injuries are not so severe that they require medication. Young Master Wei, I will tell you a way to heal them within only a few hours. At the cloud recesses cold springs that evening, Lan Wangji was soaking in the ice-cold spring water with his eyes closed, meditating, when he suddenly heard a sound beside his ear. Lan Zhan. Lan Wangji's eyes flew open. Sure enough, Wei Wuxian was lying on a slab of limestone beside the cold springs, head tilted to the side and smiling. How did you get in here? Lan Wangji blurted out. Slowly, Wei Wuxian crawled up. Cao Jun let me in, he said while removing the sash around his waist. What are you doing? Lan Wangji said. Wei Wuxian kicked off his boots, removed his clothes, and threw them everywhere. I took off all my clothes and you're still asking me what I'm doing here. I heard your clan's cold springs can do more than calm people and help with cultivation. They can also heal wounds. So your older brother let me come in here and soak with you. But it isn't very nice of you to come here by yourself, or honest. It's so cold. It's so cold. The ice-cold spring water bit into his bones as soon as he entered. Hastily, Lan Wangji put a few meters of distance between them. My purpose here is cultivation, not healing. Stop randomly throwing yourself around, Wei Wuxian said. But I'm so cold. So cold. This time he didn't actually intend to behave outrageously or bother Lan Wangji. Outsiders had a difficult time getting used to the Guosu Lan clan's cold springs, and if a newcomer was stationary for even a short period of time, their blood and limbs would freeze. Consequently, Wei Wuxian had to keep flopping around and floundering everywhere in order to warm himself up. Lan Wangji, who had been cultivating in perfect tranquility, fell victim to Wei Wuxian's erratic motions. His face was soon covered with wet spray. The droplets followed his long eyelashes and raven black hair as they slid down. He couldn't endure it any longer. "Stop moving!" As he spoke, he reached out his hand and pressed down on Wei Wuxian's shoulder. Immediately, the boy felt warmth rush forth from the place their bodies connected. The cold became far more bearable, and he involuntarily scooted toward Lan Wangji. On guard, Lan Wangji said, "What are you doing?" "I'm not doing anything," Wei Wuxian said innocently. "It just seems like your side is a bit warmer." Lan Wangji's palm pressed firmly against him, preserving the distance between the two. His voice was harsh. "Impossible." Initially, Wei Wuxian had wanted to move closer to Lan Wangji so that it would be easier to talk to him and worm his way into a friendship. But not only was he prevented from approaching the boy, Lan Wangji's responses also offered no amusement. However, Wei Wuxian wasn't angry. He glanced over at Lan Wangji's palms and upper back, and indeed, his injuries hadn't healed. When he said he hadn't come here to recuperate, he had been telling the truth. "Lan Zhan, I really admire you," Wei Wuxian said sincerely. "After I told you that you had to punish yourself too, you actually did it. You didn't let yourself off at all. I can't argue against that." Lan Wangji closed his eyes again and was silent. Wei Wuxian spoke once more. "I'm telling the truth. I've never seen anyone as upright as you, who says something and means it, like you do. I definitely couldn't act like that. You're amazing." Lan Wangji continued to ignore him. Once Wei Wuxian no longer felt cold, he began swimming around the cold springs. After swimming for a while, he still couldn't help but paddle in front of Lan Wangji. "Lan Zhan, did you figure out what I was trying to do earlier?" "No," Lan Wangji replied. "Really? You didn't know? I was kissing up to you so you'd be my friend." Lan Wangji side-eyed him. "What are you trying to accomplish?" "Lan Zhan, I'm just trying to make a new friend. We're already so familiar." "We are not." Wei Wuxian slapped the water a few times. "You're so boring when you behave like this. Really. Being my friend comes with lots of benefits." "Such as?" Lan Wangji asked. Wei Wuxian swam to the side of the spring and leaned against the limestone, his arm resting over it. "I'm always very loyal to my friends. For example, when I get a new book of porn, I'll absolutely let you have a look at it first. Hey, come back. You don't have to look. Have you ever visited Yunmeng? It's a really fun place and the food's really good. I don't know if this is a problem with Gusu or the cloud recesses, but for whatever reason your clan's food is way too unappetizing. If you come to Lotus Pier, you'll be able to eat all kinds of delicious things. I'll take you to pick lotuses and water chestnuts. Lan Zhan, will you come?" "No," Lan Wangji said. "Do you have to begin so many of your sentences with no? It sounds so cold, so unfriendly. Girls won't like it. Let me tell you, the ladies of Yunmeng are very pretty, but in a different way than in Gusu." Wei Wuxian winked at him, pleased with himself. "Are you really not gonna come?" Lan Wangji paused for a while, but still said, "No." "By rejecting me like this, you aren't even putting up a polite pretense," Wei Wuxian said. "Aren't you afraid I'll steal your clothes when I leave?" "Out!" After Lan Xichen returned from Qinghe, rather than making Wei Wuxian copy the Lan Clan rules at the library pavilion again, he instead roundly denounced him in front of everyone. After the references to the classics were trimmed out, what remained of the elder Lan's speech was roughly the following. He had never seen anyone so utterly obstreperous and shameless. "Leave, quickly, the further away the better. Don't get close to other students, especially don't tarnish his favorite pupil, Lan Wangji, ever again." While Lan Xichen was castigating him, Wei Wuxian listened with a smiling, merry face, and wasn't the least bit embarrassed or angry. When the old man left, Wei Wuxian sat down and said to Jiang Chang, "Isn't he shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted by asking me to leave now? I've already done the tarnishing. It's too late." The aquatic abyss near Cai town brought tremendous trouble to the Guosu Lan clan. There was no way to eradicate it, and neither could the Lan clan behave like the Wens and drive it off someplace else. As the chief of the Lan clan had been in isolation for many years, Lan Xichen had to exert the mental and physical effort to deal with the problem in his stead. Consequently, the lectures grew shorter and shorter, and Wei Wuxian spent more and more time strolling around the mountains with the others. Today, he was surrounded by 7 or 8 young cultivators again, and they were all headed out. As they passed by Lan clan's library, Wei Wuxian glanced up through the magnolia branches and could just see Lan Wangji sitting near the window alone. "Is he watching us?" Nie Huaisang said, puzzled. "But that's not right. We weren't being rowdy just now. Why is his expression still like that?" "He's probably thinking about how to catch us doing something wrong," Wei Wuxian replied. "Incorrect," Jiang Chang said. "Not us. You. I only saw him staring at you." "Hey, just wait. Watch me take care of him when we come back," Wei Wuxian said. "I thought you disliked how boring he was, how he's no fun. Then why don't you stop provoking him? It's like pulling on a tiger's whiskers or breaking ground above Tai Sui's head. You're courting disaster." "Wrong," Wei Wuxian said. "This is fun exactly because an actual living person has managed to be as boring as him." They only returned to the cloud recesses as it neared noon. Lan Wangji was sitting upright beside a table, tidying the stack of papers he had finished writing, when he suddenly heard the window frame lightly creak. Looking upward, he saw someone enter the room through the window. Wei Wuxian had climbed up the magnolia tree outside of the library pavilion. Radiating joy, he said, "Lan Zhan, I'm back. How have you been these few days I haven't had to come here and copy books? Do you miss me?" Resembling a monk entering meditation, who saw the world and saw nothing, Lan Wangji seemed somewhat numb as he continued to organize the small mountain of books. Intentionally misinterpreting his silence, Wei Wuxian said, "Even if you don't say it, I know. You must miss me. Or else why would you have been watching me through the window?" Immediately, Lan Wangji stared at him, his gaze full of silent denunciation. Wei Wuxian sat on the windowsill and said, "Look at yourself. You took the bait after only a couple of sentences. You lose your cool too quickly. It's way too easy to provoke you." "Leave," Lan Wangji said. "What are you gonna do, defenestrate me if I don't?" Peering at Lan Wangji's face, Wei Wuxian suspected that if he said another word, Lan Wangji would abandon his remaining self-control and murder him by nailing him to the windowsill. Hastily, he said, "Hey, can't you be less scary? I'm here to give you a present and apologize for my wrongdoings." Without even considering the offer, Lan Wangji refused. "I do not want it." "You really don't?" Wei Wuxian asked. He saw a guarded note in Lan Wangji's gaze. As though he was performing a magic trick, he pulled 2 bunnies from the chest area of his robes. He held the 2 chubby, perfectly round snowballs by the ears. The snowballs were still kicking around wildly when Wei Wuxian placed them before Lan Wangji's eyes. "Your mountain is strange. There aren't any pheasants, but there's lots of wild bunnies who aren't even afraid of people. So how about it? Aren't they fat little things? Don't you want them?" Lan Wangji looked at him with an aloof expression. "Okay then, if you don't want them, I'll give them to someone else. It just so happens that we haven't eaten anything good in the past 2 days. "Stop," Lan Wangji said after hearing this last sentence. Wei Wuxian raised his hands. "I wasn't leaving." "Who are you giving them to?" "Whoever's good at cooking rabbit meat," Wei Wuxian said. "Killing is prohibited inside the cloud recesses," Lan Wangji said. "The 3rd rule on the wall of discipline says exactly this." "No problem," Wei Wuxian replied. "I'll go down the mountain and kill them outside the boundary lines. Once I'm done, I'll take them back and have them roasted. In any case, you don't want them, so why do you care so much what happens to them?" Lan Wangji paused between each word. "Give them to me." Wei Wuxian sat on the windowsill, laughing. So you want them now? Look at yourself, you're always like this. The two bunnies were fat and round, like fluffy balls of snow. One had eyes like dead fish and lay still on the ground, moving only once in a long while. When it was time to eat, it chewed its leaves slowly and calmly with its small pink mouth. The other, however, seemed to have eaten a pill which turned it part fighting cricket. It hopped and bounded ceaselessly everywhere for a quarter of an hour. It climbed atop its companion and groped, struck and rolled around on top of the other rabbit, wriggling and bouncing endlessly. Wei Wuxian tossed the two some leaves that he had picked up somewhere. Suddenly he said, "Lan Zhan, Lan Zhan!" The hyperactive rabbit had stepped in Lan Wangji's inkstone and left a black inky footprint on top of the desk. Lan Wangji was at a loss. He had picked up a piece of paper and gravely contemplated the way to wipe it off. He had wanted to ignore Wei Wuxian, but after hearing the urgency in his voice, he thought something had happened. "What is it?" "Look at them lying on top of each other. Are they—" "They're both male," Lan Wangji said. "Male? That's odd." Wei Wuxian grabbed the ears and lifted them up to confirm. "They really are both male. Well, if they are male, they're male. I wasn't finished with what I was saying earlier. Why are you acting so high-strung? What were you thinking of? After all, I was the one who caught them, and I didn't notice whether they were male or female, but you even looked at their—" Lan Wangji finally threw him out of the library and sent him hurtling towards the ground. Wei Wuxian laughed maniacally all the way down. A crash sounded as Lan Wangji slammed the window shut and threw himself down by his desk. He surveyed the chaos of paper and inky footprints covering the floor, as well as the two white bunnies which rolled about with leaves in their mouths. He closed his eyes and covered his ears. Even the trembling, rustling branches of the magnolia tree had been shut outside the window, but no matter how Lan Wangji tried, he couldn't shut out the sound of Wei Wuxian's lively, unbridled laughter. The next day, Lan Wangji finally stopped attending the lectures. Over the course of the lectures, Wei Wuxian's seat had changed 3 times. Originally, he sat with Jiang Cheng, but Jiang Cheng behaved studiously and chose to sit in the front row in order to improve the Yunmengjiang clan's image in the eyes of the other clan. However, this location was too conspicuous and made it difficult for Wei Wuxian to goof off, so he abandoned Jiang Cheng and started sitting behind Lan Wangji. When Lan Xichen was lecturing, Lan Wangji sat so straight he blocked Lan Xiren's gaze like an iron wall. This arrangement allowed Wei Wuxian to sleep, doodle, or get up to any trouble he wanted. And other than the occasions where Lan Wangji's hand would suddenly shoot into the air and seize a note Wei Wuxian had tossed at someone, the Lan disciple was a feng shui treasure. However, Lan Xichen eventually cottoned onto Wei Wuxian's stratagem and forced him to swap places with his favorite pupil. From that point onward, if Wei Wuxian's posture was even a tiny bit short of proper, he could feel a sharp, ice-cold gaze penetrating his back, and see Lan Xiren's evil glowering in front of him too. Watched by the elder and younger Lans at all times, he was miserable. But after the case of the pornographic book and the case of the 2 rabbits, Lan Xiren's opinion that Wei Wuxian was like a vat of pitch-black ink became set in stone. The old man was terrified that his favorite pupil would be stained by the troublemaker's proximity. Thus, he made Wei Wuxian return to his old spot, and sure enough, half a month passed relatively peacefully and without incident. Inside the cloud recesses there was a long wall with a carved patterned window situated every 7 steps. The image in each was different: a cultivator playing a guqin on a high mountain, or soaring on their sword, or beheading a monster. As explained by Lan Xichen, every window on the wall represented the lifetime achievements of a Guosu Lan ancestor. The oldest among them, and the most famous, depicted the 4 seasons of the life of the clan's founder, Lan An. This founder was from a monastic background and had grown up to the chanting of Buddhist monks. He was intelligent and capable, and at a very young age became an eminent monk himself, renowned far and wide. But when he reached the age of majority, he took the name Lan from the word Xia Lan as his surname and left his monastic order to become a musician. While on his journey, he sought his fated cultivation companion, and he finally met his companion in Gusu. With their paths now bound together, the pair built the foundation of the Lan clan. After his companion's time in this world had ended, he returned to the temple again and concluded the remainder of his life. The 4 windows divided his life into exactly these 4 seasons: life at the temple, life as a musician, life with his companion, and finally his return to the solitary life of a monk. They had finally learned something interesting after so many days at the cloud recesses. Despite Lan Xichen's dull recitation of dry chronology, Wei Wuxian had at last managed to listen to one of his lectures. After class was over, he smiled and said, "So it turns out that the founder of the Lan clan was a monk. No wonder. He entered the world of mortals in order to meet a single person, and when that person left this world, he left it as well, leaving nothing behind. But if this was Lan clan's founder, how did they wind up producing such unromantic descendants?" No one had suspected such an old-fashioned, renowned clan of having a founder like Lan An, and one by one they began to discuss it. After much back and forth, the topic took a turn towards cultivation companions. They began chattering about the kind of cultivation companion they dreamed of, and assessing each famous clan's cultivators. At this time, someone said, "Brother Zixuan, who do you like the best?" As soon as Wei Wuxian and Jiang Cheng heard these words, their gazes simultaneously found the young disciple in the classroom's front row. The boy had haughty but handsome features and wore a vermilion dot in the middle of his forehead. His collar, the edges of his sleeves, and the sash around his waist were all embroidered with the Venus above the billowing snow's white peony. This was the young master the Lanling Jin Clan had sent to be educated in Gusu, Jin Zixuan. Someone else said, "You shouldn't ask Brother Zixuan. He already has a fiancée, so of course he'll say that it's her." When he heard the word fiancée, the corner of Jin Zixuan's mouth seemed to twitch, revealing a not altogether happy expression. However, the disciple who had spoken first was oblivious to the boy's body language, so he laughed and continued questioning. "Really? Which clan's daughter is he engaged to? She must be both spectacularly beautiful and spectacularly talented." Jin Zixuan's eyebrow twitched. "There's no need to continue discussing this." Suddenly Wei Wuxian said, "What do you mean by there's no need to continue?" The entire classroom looked at him, shocked. Ordinarily, Wei Wuxian was full of smiles and laughter. Even when he was being reprimanded or punished, he was never truly angry. But now, there was a clear wisp of ferocity in his eyes. Jiang Cheng also didn't lash out at Wei Wuxian's troublemaking like he usually did. Instead, he sat by his disciple brother's side, his face contorted into a very ugly expression. "Is it hard to understand the words 'no need to continue'?" Jin Zixuan sneered. Wei Wuxian smiled coldly. "The words aren't hard to understand, but it is hard to understand what could possibly dissatisfy you about my disciple sister." The others whispered among themselves, and after hearing a short explanation, they finally understood what was going on. It turned out the question raised a few moments ago had unintentionally stirred up a hornet's nest, as Jin Zixuan's fiancée was none other than the Yunmengjiang clan's Jiang Yanli. Jiang Yanli was Jiang Fengmian's eldest daughter and Jiang Cheng's older sister by blood. She was widely regarded to be mild-mannered, with a colorless personality. Her voice was smooth, but her words were lacking in flavor. Her appearance was above average at best, and she had no notable talents. Some were bound to be overshadowed by their peers among the clan of cultivation, but her fiancé, Jin Zixuan, happened to be her exact opposite. He was the only son of Jin Guangshan's legal wife, and his appearance was enviable and his talent dazzling. If it had been only a matter of Jiang Yanli's personal qualities, she would have had no hope of marrying him according to usual customs. Indeed, she barely even had the qualifications to compete with other cultivation families' daughters. Her engagement to Jin Zixuan had come about only due to the relationship between their mothers. Her mother was from the Mei Shan Yu clan, which was allies with Jin Clan's mother's clan, and the two women had grown up together and become close friends. The Jin clan had proud, haughty mannerisms, which Jin Clan had fully inherited. His vision aimed skyward. Consequently, he had long been unhappy with the engagement. Indeed, not only was he unhappy with his mother's choice of fiancé, he was even more unhappy with the fact that she had arranged his marriage without his permission, and thus his heart rebelled against it all the more. Today, those feelings seized the opportunity to flare up again. "Why don't you ask what about her could make me satisfied?" he said in return. Suddenly Jiang Cheng rose. Wei Wuxian pushed him away and stepped between them, smiling coldly. "You think you're very satisfactory? As though you have the right to be so picky." Because of this marriage business, Jin Clan did not have a high opinion of the Yunmeng clan, and besides, he couldn't stand the way Wei Wuxian conducted himself. Moreover, he boasted of being unrivaled among the younger generation, and had never experienced being treated as though he were so inconsequential. His blood grew hot, and he blurted out, "If she's unhappy, then let her break off the engagement. I certainly don't cherish your wonderful disciple sister. If you cherish her so much, why don't you take it up with your father? Doesn't he love you more than his own son?" After hearing the last sentence, Jiang Cheng's eyes narrowed, and Wei Wuxian was no longer able to contain his own fury. He flew at Jin Clan, his fist raised. Though Jin Clan had been prepared to defend himself, he hadn't expected Wei Wuxian to hit back so quickly. The attack started before he had even finished speaking, and when the fist struck him, it immediately caused half his face to go numb. He retaliated at once. The fight disturbed the peace of two great clans. Zhang Fengmian and Jin Guangshan hurriedly left Yunmeng and Lanling for Gusu on the very day it occurred. The two clan chiefs met the two rule breakers, both of whom had been forced to kneel as punishment, and then went to Lan Xichen, who criticized them so comprehensively it made both of them sweat. After some small talk, Zhang Fengmian brought up his intention to break off the engagement. He told Jin Guangshan, "The engagement was originally made at the insistence of Ali's mother. I never agreed with it. Given what happened today, it seems both sides aren't very fond of each other, so it's best not to force the issue." Startled, Jin Guangshan hesitated a bit. Regardless of the situation, ending an engagement with a member of another great clan was never a good thing. "What do children understand? Let them fight. Brother Fengmian, we need not take notice." "Brother Jin, though we can help them arrange a marriage, we can't live the marriage for them. In the end, they are the ones who will spend their lives together." This marriage business wasn't Jin Guangshan's idea in the first place either. From the perspective of consolidating power through marriage alliance, the Yunmeng clan would not be his first choice, nor was it the best choice. The engagement had happened only because he was perpetually afraid of opposing his wife. But in any case, since the Jiang clan had brought it up of their own accord, and Jin clan was on the male side of the arrangement, and thus had fewer things to be concerned about, it was not necessary to remain entangled. Besides, he knew Jin Clan wasn't happy with having Jiang Yanli as his fiancée. After giving it serious consideration, Jin Guangshan found his backbone, and he agreed. At the time, Wei Wuxian was ignorant of the destruction his fight had wreaked. He was kneeling on the stretch of pebble road to which Lan Xichen had assigned him, when Jiang Cheng walked over from afar and mocked him. "You're kneeling so obediently." "It's not like you don't know I have to do this all the time." Wei Wuxian's voice filled with schadenfreude. "But this Jin Clan guy, there's no way he hasn't been pampered and spoiled rotten since birth. No one's ever forced him to kneel, I'm sure of it. If he doesn't wind up crying for Mommy and Daddy today, I'm not named Wei." Jiang Cheng lowered his head for a moment and said quietly, "Father has come." "Has our disciple sister come?" Wei Wuxian asked. "Why would she come? To see you make her lose face? If she was here, wouldn't she have found you and given you medicine?" Wei Wuxian sighed and said, "If only she had come. It's a good thing you didn't do anything." I was going to. If you hadn't pushed me away, the other side of Jin Clan's face would be hideous too. Stop it. His face is uglier for being lopsided. I heard this Jin Clan guy's like a peacock and just loves his own appearance. Imagine how he'd feel if he looked in the mirror now. Wei Wuxian beat the ground and laughed, then continued. Actually, I should have let you hit him and just watched from your side. Uncle Jiang might not have come then. But I had no other option. It was intolerable. Jiang Chang grunted and said softly, You sure have nice thoughts. Wei Wuxian had said these words idly, but Jiang Chang's inner feelings were a tangled mess. He was well aware Wei Wuxian's words weren't false. Jiang Fengmian had never rushed to another clan in less than a day because of him, regardless of whether what happened was big or small, or good or bad. Never. When Wei Wuxian saw Jiang Chang's melancholy expression, he thought he was still upset with what Jin Clan said. You should leave. You don't need to keep me company any longer. If Lan Wangji comes again, he'll catch you. If you have time, you should find Jin Clan and watch his pitiful kneeling. Jiang Chang was somewhat taken aback. Lan Wangji? What was he doing here? He still has the nerve to come see you again? Yeah, I think his bravery is laudable, if he still has the nerve to come see me. His uncle probably told him to check on me and see if I was kneeling properly. Jiang Chang's instincts were sending him ominous signals. So, were you kneeling properly? I was then, Wei Wuxian replied. But I waited for him to walk away a bit, then took a tree branch, lowered my head, and dug out a hole in the dirt near me. It's the pile right by your foot. There are ant tunnels there. It took me so much effort to find them. Anyway, I waited for him to turn back and see my shoulders shaking. He had to have thought I was crying, so he came back and asked me. You should have seen his face when he caught sight of the ant tunnels. Jiang Chang said, Why don't you just get the hell out and go back to Yunmeng? I bet he never wants to see you again. Thus, that evening, Wei Wuxian packed up his things, got the hell out, and went back to Yunmeng with Jiang Fengmian.